streamer pattern. It's tied by Clark Pierce Cheech over at Fly Fish Food. And the reason I'll start with this is because it's really big, and it's the exact same technique as tying a smaller soft hackle. So I thought when we're learning how to wrap these hackles for the first time that we'll go ahead and go big or go home, right? All right, so on this fly, I want my body to come about 2/3 of the way up. So I'm going to go ahead and start my thread right here. And I'm just going to do touching wraps all the way back to the barb of the hook, which is kind of like always our stopping point on most flies. So when I get back here, all right, and so what we tie these out of are partridge feathers. Everybody see that? This is a full pelt, and there's a lot of different colors, a lot of different size feathers on here. This is another, this might be a Brahma hen, but this one's just about been wiped out for big bugs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a pretty large feather, and I put feathers in all your kits that are fairly large, and I might not have one on this pelt that's big enough, but I'll. So when you look at these feathers, you'll see that there's a lot of fluff at the bottom, and then you've got your good feathers up top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to take off all of this fluff and just leave me with the working part of the feather. Now on this fly, the tail is actually made out of partridge also. In your cups, I got really big partridge. That's why this other cape is all out now, because I kind of emptied it out for your kits. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the long barbules off of this partridge, and I'm going to take them from both sides, and this is what I'm going to use for my tail. So it's just a clump. On the fly that Clark ties, that Cheech ties, he uses all that fluff, all that garbage from the bottom of the feather, and his whole point is to tie a fly that uses the entire feather. And you know, sitting in your vise it looks okay, but I've actually done it, and as soon as it gets wet, that fluff just turns to kind of nothing. So I think they hold up a lot better if I tie them with the better feathers. So the next thing we're going to do is this is going to just have a tinsel rib, and it doesn't matter what kind of tinsel you want to use. This one's orange on one side, green on the other. I went down to Cheech and Curtis's new store in Orem on Wednesday with Bill Quap. It's a small store at 1625 North State in Orem. And I tell you, it's not a fly shop. There's not a waiter or a boot to be seen, but it is a candy store for guys like us. They got a lot of stuff in a small place. The only thing he's missing is a Sam Swink to run it. So anyway, so I just tied in my tinsel, and now I'm going to dub it, and I'm going to use just natural hare's ear, just something kind of beige and spiky. And I'm going to dub this a little bit thicker, and I want to build a taper towards the front. Okay, so I'm going to start with just a tiny bit. And as I come down, I'm going to try, I really don't like to wrap over wraps of hackle. I'd rather have like my hackle be thicker, but sometimes you can't do that because you just can't put this stuff on too thick and have it look right. All right, I'm going to start with that. Slide my noodle up. Okay, now I'm going to wrap, make sure that my first wrap touches right where my tail started. And then where my thread started at that 2/3 point, that's where I want to end this. And we just made it. And then just kind of brush everything back. my my tinsel. I'm just going to wrap right up through it, just kind of spiral it. The fly is called an AP emerger variant, is what it's called. Okay, now once I have it tied in, then I'm going to take a dubbing brush, which everybody has in their kit. Just a tongue depressor with some Velcro on it. And don't go too hard because you can break that tinsel. And I'm just going to bug it up. And then just bring all those fibers back. Alright, now for a collar, I'm going to put any kind of sparkle ice dubbing. And you guys don't have this in your, I don't think I put any in your kit, so I'll come around and drop some off. But what I like to use is this brown ice dub, and they call it brown, but I don't know, that doesn't look too brown to me, but that's what it always looks like. So it's got green and purple, and so on this I'm just going to put a dubbing ball right in front. Nice and easy. But any kind of ice dubbing works, any color that you like. And I want to build a pretty good sized ball here. So I'm just going to come right in front and I want to build it. And this I'm going to pick out.
What does he call this pattern?
AP emerger variant. I don't know if you watch the when he does the video on this, his wife calls him during the middle of the video. He's like, I'm making a video here. He says, no, I can't make out. And she hangs up on him. He's a funny guy. Yeah, he is. All right. So now we're gonna get down to the business of hackle wrapping. Well, this is on a size 6 hook. You can tie it down, you do a 10 or so. I mean, we fish this as a streamer pattern in strawberry, and I honestly haven't really caught a ton of fish on it. I'm just tying it because it's a soft hackle and it's big. So I have fished it a couple times, but so far Klusman and Syls haven't come over to my boat and asked me for one, so that tells you something.
Well, we can't catch you, that's the reason.
You got that 55-pound thrust motor.
I'm gonna get flames painted on my boat too. So this is from a different patch. I can't remember, but I believe that this is a Brahma hen. So we tie, any kind of bird feather, just about can be a soft hackle. We use partridge a lot. We use Brahma hen. We use what else? We use some of the little ones. I use starling, which is really delicate. So you gotta get your touch on for sure. All right. Now on the little ones that we're gonna do, we'll actually, you gotta be able to measure how far back your barbules are gonna come. On this fly, it doesn't matter because it's so big. But the way you do that is you just hold out some of the longer fibers, put it where you're gonna tie it in, and you can see how far back it's gonna go. On this fly, like I say, it's not gonna matter, but on the little ones, we will be measuring. All right, so to prepare this to tie in, I'm gonna take just the tip, and you can use hackle pliers if you want, and hold it right in the middle of the spine. And I'm gonna strip everything backwards. And then I'm gonna leave, it's kind of like a little Christmas tree, leave a little tie-in point. On some of the smaller flies, since I'm gonna tie this in, you can see how this feather is concave. I'm not gonna tie it in this way, I'm gonna tie it in this way because I want my barbules to go back. If I tied it in this way, they're gonna go forward.
You couldn't see that.
Okay, let me
You
see.
have to hold it closer to the fly.
Okay, so I'm going to tie it in this way so that you can see it's bent, curved over the top, as opposed to this way, where it's curved up. All right? And then, since I'm wrapping in this direction, sometimes we actually pull this row of feathers off, and that way we just have stem laying straight down on our hook, which sometimes makes a neater fly. Okay, so that's my tie-in point right there in that little where the feathers change directions. So I'm going to come in and I'm just going to catch right there. I'm going to wrap towards the eye. And then when I get here, I'm going to take that little tip and pull it backwards. I'm going to wrap back. All right, now if there's any part of that tip that is, I was having trouble seeing, I forgot to change glasses. Whoa, looks terrible. If there's any part of that tip that's sticking out, you can clip it off, but I pretty much covered it there. All right, so now I'm going to bring my thread back to the head, and I've given myself this little orange platform is where my hackle is going to wrap, because I want to make sure that each wrap of hackle is in front of the last wrap. And now here I do kind of like to use a hackle plier, but you got to be be a little careful. I mean, these things are not they're not that sturdy. Especially when we get into smaller sizes. All right, so when I do my wraps, I want my barbules to lay backwards. So there's a couple of tricks. One is you can grab and you can kind of twist them in your fingers and get them trained to go that way. That works most of the time, but generally as I come around, I'm just going to stroke them back. And also, if you get to the end of your fly and you have barbules going forwards, that can definitely be corrected. Okay, so as I come around, I've actually left way too much head on this, but I thought I was going to take up more room. That's okay. Better than crowding the eye. All right, so now I just have stem left. I'm going to do a couple of wraps behind it. Go ahead and remove this. And then if I have any barbules sticking forward, I can just bring them back, and as I'm wrapping up my head, if I put a couple of wraps right over that base, actually I got a lot of head on this thing. It's all right. I can do a couple of wraps right over the butts, and that will force them backwards. So that's about how I want that collar to look. And just wish it was a little closer to the front. That's okay. Your teachers will do a better job than I did. Let's hope.
And so that provides more disturbance?
Yeah, it kind of undulates in the water, and in the small soft hackles that we fish in the streams, they're kind of fished like emergers, and I'm sure it lays back as it's swinging through the current. This is actually being fished like a streamer, so yeah, it should cause disturbance and noise, as Mr. Schultz likes to say. Like fish are listening, I don't know. He thinks so. He catches more fish than I do too, so he probably knows. A little bit of UV. So if you do that, you can take a
That's how Schultz ties.
Only for the ones I give away.
Here's a fly for it.
see if you can get it on, you can fish it. So a feather works really good. Clean it right out. And also, you could use your bodkin, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, this is that UV flow. It kind of goes. The UV thin kind of stays where you put it. And that would be that. Let's tie.
How much are those flashlights?
What's that?
That flashlight, how much is it? The cost?
Oh, somebody gave this to me at
30?
Somebody gave it to me at Wasatch Fly Expo last year. My UV light died, and somebody gave me this laser pointer. And
12. You can get them down to 12.
if you use that clear cure goo with that light, you can actually make it smoke, which is always cool. Okay, this next fly is a real traditional small pattern. This is one that Mike Lee was going to tie, but I'm sure he's having a lot more fun at that TU meeting, I guarantee you. They got Subway sandwiches, you name it. All right, so this fly is actually tied much smaller when it's fished. It's called a Syls midge, S-Y-L-S. And I'm gonna go ahead and just keep using my orange thread because I have it out. On this fly, we wanna go ahead and cover, it really doesn't matter where you start. The reason I like to start my thread in certain places is because on that last fly, I wanted my body to come 2/3 up. So I start my thread there, and then that way when I'm wrapping my body up, I know exactly where to stop. This fly is only got 3 materials. Has no tail. Take it back to my barb and work that out. All right. So I laid some peacock strands on everybody's table. The recipe for this, depending on who you watch, either calls for 3 strands or 2 strands. I'm gonna just do mine with 2. My peacock is kind of fluffy. Okay. So I could have tied my wire in, I guess, on the way back, but get a nice little thread body here. Go ahead and tie in. So everybody in that cup has a piece of very fine silver wire. Yeah, it is extra small. All right, so what we're gonna do in this one, I think, didn't you, Jason, didn't you do something with your pheasant where you twisted your thread into it or something?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're kind of going to do the same thing. So the peacock is very, very fragile. It's more fragile than the pheasant that we tied the nymphs with. What I like to do, those tips are the most fragile, so I'll usually just go ahead and break those off. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to come up a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and just take right where I broke off and tie those in really well. Bring my thread all the way back. Okay, so now I'm tied in, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pheasant, peacock, and my wire. I'm going to pull it all down together, and then I'm going to take my hackle pliers. I want to make sure it's kind of taut, and then I'm going to just spin it. And so what I'm doing is I'm spinning my wire into my peacock, and that's going to make it really strong, even stronger than thread maybe.
You can also make a dubbin loop with your thread and use.
Yeah. Just following the directions.
First time for trying to confuse them.
Mike Lee said, I want you to teach this fly, and this is how I want you to do it. I said, all right, Captain. Go to TU and shut up. And then I'm just doing touching wraps going forward. And all I want to do is leave room for my soft hackle on the front. This fly looks a little funny, I think, tied this size. This is I think we have 12s, and generally I think this fly is probably fished in a 16 or maybe even smaller. I can tell you I've tied 2 of these in my life. This is the second one. All right. right, so now I have a little tie-in point for my feather. Again, I'm going to take my partridge. And now, so that first fly we tied, we really needed to know, or we didn't need to know how long the fibers were because it was such a big fly. But if you can see, so if I just prepared my feather to that point, pulled off the longest barbules, that's way longer than my bug is. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to just continue heading up, and I want to make sure that I strip off both sides evenly. So if whatever number I'm taking off of one side, I'm taking off the other. You don't have to count them, you can just tell by the way it looks when you're done. Okay, so I'm still pretty long. So I'm going to come up a little farther. Okay, so that doesn't leave me much, but that's probably all I need. Okay, so just like on that last fly, we're going to take it in the center. Okay, and so that's my tie-in point. Now what a lot of people do on small flies, so you can leave it that long, tie it down, fold it back, and tie it down, and that's probably the most secure way, which is the way we did that last fly. But I'll just, since we're teaching here, come in and just clip it. Just give yourself just a little triangle to tie in with, and then that way you don't really have to cut anything off. I believe that they probably are a lot more secure if you fold them back. But this is just another way to do this. And then on the next fly, I'll rip off the other side and wrap that. I'll show you how to do that too, which makes your flies, I think, come out a little bit neater. I'm gonna stop drinking coffee before I do this. All right, so now the same as last time, we're gonna wrap. Stroke all your barbules back as you wrap. And on this fly, you don't want it to be, so just because I have this much left doesn't mean that I want all that on my bug. I'm kind of going to look at it. We want this to be kind of spidery looking, and I think that that's about as far. That was 2 wraps or maybe 2.5 wraps. I think that's a pretty good looking Syls midge. Whip finish.
I like the orange thread. That's good.
Yeah, orange and green.
Little hot spot.
Yeah.
Did that on purpose.
He's a wizard.
Mike's gonna know.
And then again, I would put a little head cement on that. And if you don't like the way all your hackles are laying, something that works really good for soft hackles, I think, is an old toothbrush. You can just come in, and sometimes your fibers will be stuck together, but I think that's a pretty good color. And then I would put a little head finish on it, and away we, or head cement, and off we go. All right, that's it. All right, so this next fly we're going to tie is called a orange and partridge, or orange and yellow, depending on what kind of floss and stuff you have. Speaking of which, oh, I got some. Okay. All right. Now this is a pattern that I have tied before, and it's kind of a mainstay with soft hackles. It doesn't have a tail traditionally. And sometimes it's tied with just a thread body. We do want to create a taper, you know, we want a carrot-shaped body, and so you can do that with thread. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do it with thread, and then I'm going to tie some floss and do a floss body as well. Sometimes it's tied with a piece of wire rib over that floss, so you can certainly do that if you want to. I generally don't on mine, but anyway, find my bionic glasses and I'll get started here.
Right there next to
Yeah.
They're on your.
And I'm the young guy in the club.
You may be good looking, but you don't look good.
All right. So I'm going to do a nice even thread body. And then, you think this fly should have a tail?
No, I'm just saying that.
'Cause we can sure put one on here.
Called carrot nymph that's good for bluegill. Tied in the orange, but it does have a tail. You don't need one.
I can sure do it though. Okay, so what I did is I went back to my barb and then I went back to the 2/3 point. This one is going to have like a dubbing thorax, and traditionally it's rabbit. I like to take my rabbit and mix a little bit of crystal flash in it. Oh, here it is. And so I just take a little bit and mix them together, and I think that's I like that little sparkle in there. Okay, so we're gonna this is orange floss. Everybody should have some of some color. This fly doesn't have to be, it's, you know, yellow, orange, tie it in red. It's just called partridge and orange, but it's also called partridge and yellow. And so I want to tie this in. I want to kind of try to keep it on top. And now I really want to make sure I have touching wraps. And like that trick that we learned on the flies last week, if I hold this floss up at an angle, it'll gather all of my thread wraps and put them right next to each other. All right, so now we're going to do a body taper. So basically all it is I'm going to take my thread, I'm going to go ahead and wrap back forward to where I want to stop. You can see I nicked my thread there with my hook point. Okay, so I'm right here. All right, so I want this to be the thickest part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my thread back to about 3/4, wrap it back forward, and bring it down to half, wrap it back forward, and maybe a little bit more, and back forward. And what I'll do, my thread wraps will accumulate up front, and that will cause, and I'll get my thread nice and flat. So I'm going to come down, nice touching turns, and I'm going to come down to about the 3/4 point, or the way I always do it is just I come down to where I'm just about to hit the point of that hook, right there. Then I come back forward. And then when I get back where my starting point is, I'm going to come about halfway down and back forward. And then what I'm doing is I'm just building a taper. And if you're doing this on a, you know, like I say, I fish these much smaller too. If you're doing this on a smaller hook, that carrot-shaped taper will be much more pronounced. It's kind of hard to get a really good thread taper on a big hook unless you're tying with big fat thread. So, but you get the idea. That's the technique to do it. Okay, I'm going to come forward, then I'm going to take my floss. I want my floss to stay nice and flat. Nice touching wraps. So this would have fished just fine with the thread body. I just figured that you're paying $50, we ought to give you as many steps as possible, right? So I probably should have done wire and a tail too. Okay, so that's your body. Now I'm going to just dub I'm going to dub kind of like that crystal dubbing on the first fly. I'm just going to dub like kind of a ball. I don't really care how tight it is because I'm going to brush it out also. So I'm going to go ahead and put quite a bit less dubbing on than I did on that first fly. And I just want to create a thorax right here. always be careful to know, you know, where you are, because you do have to leave in tie-in room for your hackle. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. Pull all the fibers back, come forward. Okay, and then because this is rabbit, I can take my dubbing brush, I can bug it out. It's a lot easier. I saw on that first fly that a lot of people had their hackle turned in, tied in before they did this, and this is much. Get my little micro brush, and then just kind of wet your fingers and bring everything back. Just kind of give it that buggy look. All right, now, so again, just another regular feather. Come in, take off all the trash. I saw a couple people tying these in by the stem and then grab the tip and wrap it. You know, I watch people that do that routinely. The end result is pretty much the same. You know, I can't really tell a fly that was wrapped one way or the other. It's just what's easier for you. I always like leaving the stem long as my handle. So this fly, just like the last one, you know, I don't want my hackles to extend past my fly, so that's obviously too long. So I'm going to go ahead and just start gradually popping them off. Okay, so that'll work. All right, so now in this one, I'm going to remove half the feathers to wrap it. And this is just, you know, again, this is not something that's always done with this particular fly. You could do it with every soft hackle you tie. It's just a technique to teach, that's all. Okay, so I got my feather prepared just like all the rest. When I tie it on, I know that I'm going to tie it on this way, right, going over the top. So this is the leading edge. This is the leading edge of my wraps. So I'm going to remove those fibers. And don't try to do that all at once. Just grab a little section and pull, and a little section and pull, and it'll all come off. And then what you end up with, now you've got half as many hackle fibers now, so you're definitely going to get a sparse collar. I end up with something that looks like that. All right, and now I'm going to go ahead and tie it in. Go ahead and clip my tip short. And what's left over, I'm just going to fold back, wrap that down. Pretty damn good job, I thought. 4 flies in 16 minutes. Okay, so now we're going to wrap. And now I only have one side of my hackle to worry about. And this too is rotary vices or really make this easier. I've tied the rest without it, so, and I just want to make sure that each wrap goes right in front of the wrap before. And so on this one I won't stroke them back as I go, and I'll show you. Good, we got some that are clumped up. I can show you how to fix that too. Okay. So I really don't want to trap any hackle fibers since I pulled half of them off. I don't have that many to spare. Okay, so some of them are kind of coming forward, so I can take my hand and I can just pull them all straight back, and then I can come back with my thread and I can wrap just a little bit over those butts. And then if I do, now they're all going back. So, you know, a lot of people put a lot of work into stroking those fibers back and making sure that every wrap looks good. And that is the way to tie these, but if that doesn't work out for you, you know, it can all be corrected here at the end. Okay, and then I got some clumped together fibers. Some people will use a bodkin, a needle to go in, but this trusty little toothbrush. And that toothbrush also will help kind of brush out some more of that dubbing. And that is an orange and partridge. Get to work.
Lisa's probably looking for a toothbrush right now.